What's up guys and welcome back. Today we are finally going to install the Quickshifter for this motorcycle. I am super excited about it, the way the RS660, and of course a couple weeks ago at Moto America I got to ride this Tracer 9 GT that just shifted so amazing up and down. I'm truly hoping this is going to be the same way. I haven't gotten to ride the RS660 and actually use the Quickshifter auto blipper, but I've heard a lot of good things about them, so I can't wait. We're gonna get this thing installed real quick. I'll show you guys step by step how to do it. And we also still have left over the IMU and the up map that we're gonna install as well. So stay tuned for more videos to come. So here are all the parts that come with the Quickshifter kit. Here are the tools I use for this job. I always use picks. I had a 17mm wrench, a 10mm wrench, an 8mm wrench, a 1/4 inch with a small extension and a 10mm socket, a 4mm hex key, and then something to cut zip ties with. Before we get started, we'll go ahead and quickly put this thing together. Take this little spacer that has the indent in it, and this is going to be on the outside. And we'll also have this rubber seal that's going to go in between this and the actual Quickshifter itself. And then from there, you'll see our bolt will slide in and fit flush with this outside component. Another rubber washer, our other spacer, and you can see how the inside has a little indent, and that's what's going to keep our rubber little seal or gasket here from moving around. Go ahead and put that in there. And that's pretty much the entire assembly of the Quickshifter. So like I said, we'll measure it here in just a little bit. I just wanted you guys to see how this thing actually goes together. Before I take it apart, I'm gonna go ahead and measure it just to see how far it is, and it looks to me like it's exactly 10 3/4 inches. Sorry if you guys are all metric, you'll have to look up that measurement. 10 3/4 is how far this is. For the most part, I think it's less necessary the exact distance as much as where you want to position the shifter. You do want some 90-degree angles in this when we put the Quickshifter on, because it will assist in making the shift easier. This is just a baseline 10 3/4, or for another method, you could measure a known distance to a known distance, which would be, for me in this instance, from the top down to the top of the shift link. The shifter here itself is exactly 4 inches from here to here. So that could be another measurement if you wanted to get it back to the exact same position it was in. This is an adjustable lever too, so you can get it back to where it is stock, and then you can still loosen this and rotate the actual shifter in different positions too, which is pretty cool that the levers come with that. All right, now I like to cheat as much as I possibly can. So you can actually see here, there's this little metal ring kind of in between this ball part and the flat part. I'm able to take that off. It's just a little clamp. You can tell it really wasn't put on correctly. And that'll allow this rod to actually come apart. And at that point, we can get this rubber boot off, which is really what's keeping the grease with inside this, and expose our bolt here. So this outside ball piece here is an 8mm, and this back nut back here is a 10mm. So we're just going to use this 8mm to hold it in place while we use the 10mm to break this nut free. There we go. And we're just going to take this nut off. And the reason why I'm doing it this way is it's obviously considerably easier to do, but also because of the way the Quickshifter works in mounting, it does not mount the same way. So this isn't going to matter whether we have this piece on here like so or not. So for some quick reference, this is what we took off. And for the next step here, we could still use our 8mm, and we got a 10mm locking nut here. And keep in mind that this is all reverse thread. So if you try and tighten this like normal, you'll actually just kind of strip it out and mess it up. So we actually want to go down with our wrench so that we can loosen that locking nut. I'm gonna reuse this that's already on here. Like I said, I'm all about saving some time, saving some energy. So I went ahead and took off the end that came with the new shift rod because I do have a new bike. This stuff is not old. There's still grease in this. It should be perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do is basically just reuse the old stuff. So I'm going to take this and run this out. I want to be able to get both of them on the same amount of threads. So we're going to go ahead and insert our rod into this end, our rod into this end. And remember, counter, it is opposite threads. So we'll go ahead and thread this guy in here. And at that point, make sure our locking nuts are not in the way. We're gonna put just a little dab of grease inside on each piece so that we have free movement. It shouldn't have issues moving, but we're gonna grease it just in case. I am just using some regular automotive grease here, nothing fancy. I'm just gonna put a small amount in here on each side. We'll roll it around, move it around, make sure those seals get nice and lubed up, and then we will clean all this off afterwards. We don't want that much on there. We just want enough on the inside here to where we have free moving parts, and make sure those, like I said, those seals fit nicely together is what we want. Go ahead and clean her all up. More grease on the outside, the more dirt and debris we get later. So we'll make sure we're nice and clean. We'll get our nut off the back here, can run her in, and put our new 10 mil on the back here. Now we don't need any Loctite, and that's because this nut that came with the shifter is actually a locking nut itself. So there's no need to put any Loctite on here. We're threaded on there, sweet. We are a 4mm hex key here. And as we tighten this down, what we want to pay attention to, those seals stay in place the way they're supposed to be. And so far, because I'm pushing pressure with the hex key while I'm moving it, it's keeping everything bound together nicely. So there we go, we're on there. We don't have to over tighten this, we just need to get it nice and snug. There we go. It is a locking nut, it's not going to come off, and pushed a little tiny bit of the grease out of that seal. Go ahead and clean everything up again. So we are pretty much in place. Now it's just the adjustment. And I was a 10 3/4, or we can go with this measurement here where I went right on top. And I can put it right back at that 4-inch mark. That is pretty much dead on it. We are right there back at the stock setting. So I'm gonna make sure I hold this rod while I run this down. Get these nice and close right there. And these are just locking nuts. We got an 8mm, 10mm. Now these locking nuts, maybe 10 foot-pounds max. Wouldn't take much to get these things nice and tight. Looks like a 17mm will fit on here, and then just no more than like 10 foot-pounds, guys. If you had crow's feet, you could torque it if you want. I think that's tight enough. It's not going anywhere. A very minimal movement in play. These are all still at a 90-degree angle, so that's good to go. So for now, the fun parts, which is getting this cable through the right routing. You'll notice here there is a spot right here for it to go within this plastic cover right here. And obviously we need to have enough room for it to move. This is going to go under our shifter here. And then there's this other plastic piece here, or plastic cable routing item that we can shove our cable into, which will bind it and kind of keep it from moving like so. Now for the fun part is we need to route it with this cable. We're gonna have to remove this fairing, the seats, and the majority of the rear fairings, which is actually quite easy to do. Use our key in the bottom here, remove our top cover seat and our actual main seat. Get those guys out of the way there. The next thing we're going for is these 4 silver 10mm bolts. And that will remove this top plate here. So there's our 4 bolts taken out. The next bolts we're going to go after is to remove these 2 side plates here. We have these 4 bolts right here. Now these are separate, they are different than some of the other bolts we're going to take off. So make note that there is no lip on the inside of this bolt. It is a slightly smaller one. It goes into these 4 positions right here. Now because these bolts are different than some of the other bolts we're going to be taking off, I'm going to set these aside separately. Continuing on with this fairing piece, we're going to pull this black bolt out right here. And you can see how this one actually has a lip inside here. And the point of that is you can see there's a wider hole here, and what it's doing is taking 2 fairing pieces and keeping them nicely together where the other bolt would not center and line these up, so you would have movement within them. So make sure you put these right back in the same spot that they came out of. So here's one with the lip. I'll set this aside separately. We'll go ahead and get this guy off. Then we'll get this one out, which is technically this lower fairing, but that lower fairing has to come off as well. And under here we have another one of these silver bolts to get out. Now that this bolt and this bolt is removed, you can just slide this back and then pretty much pull straight down. And you can see this lip right here, which was connected on the inside, and then we can just pull back and out. This one here in particular that is slid up under the fuel tank. So there's that side fairing off. We have one more under here, and that is going to remove that other side fairing. Coming back over to this side, we have one here, and that's pretty much going to separate this piece. We have these 2 over here, and you can see there's a lot of stuff to take apart here, but it is actually quite easy to do. There's nothing too difficult about removing these fairings, in my opinion. And then of course back over on this side there is that one more silver one just next to that rear brake reservoir. And just like on the other side, we just slide this one back a little bit, pull down, and slide it out. Last fairing bolt right here on the bottom, which we can't get to until we remove the other fairing, which is why we're taking it off in the sequence that we are. So there we go. So the next thing to get out of the way here is this little tray that kind of covers the battery and gives us a place for storage. So we'll take that guy out, this one out, and we can just remove this tray. So now that all the really fun disassembly is over with, now we'll just keep rerouting this cable. And you can see this cable right here, this cable right here, how it's kind of going behind the frame and it's going with inside this plastic box here. I'm gonna follow that and potentially zip tie it to it. We'll see how many zip ties we end up using. The kit did come with 3, I believe. So I'm just gonna run it to follow this cable through this plastic right here. And the cool part is the cable is fairly thick, so as long as it doesn't hit something, you can already see it kind of pushing itself up, kind of stuck on this little servo right here. So I'm gonna use this little pick here to kind of help guide it a little bit as I push it. There we go, right on. Got the cable coming up over here by the power cable. Pull as much slack out of it as I can, and I think that's ultimately why we're gonna zip tie it over there. So we got it running up over here. And if you look into the manual, ultimately there's a couple of servos down here. So I would assume you'd kind of have to remove the fuel tank to get at these servos, replace them, or I'm sorry, they're not servos, they're probably relays of some sort. And there's a channeling down there that kind of leads that way. The thing is this cable is more than long enough, in my opinion, to just stick right there. Here's where the cable is located and you have to basically cut the zip tie right here. And here is our connector. So now that we have this connector out, and we're just going to plug her on in and then spend a little bit of time zip tying this up so that it's not touching anything. Because at this point where it's sitting, I think it's more than good enough. So it's kind of hard to see the routing that I did here. I did run it through and in between these like little relays that are in here, obviously behind the battery with the rest of the wiring that's going through there. We're gonna go ahead and take our 3 zip ties and get those hooked up real quick. So I put the first zip tie right here, putting these 3 wires together to keep them all together. And then the second zip tie is right behind here, which will be hidden behind the fairings, and that'll keep those together and keep it from moving. And for the third zip tie, I put it right here to keep these in place. So this will keep everything from being moved around. The wiring is near nothing hot or moving, so we should be good to go. And our next step is to get all these fairings put back on. So the first thing we want to start with is putting this back in play. Now it will move around on you, so you're gonna have to be like finagle this a little bit. But you can also see back here, there's this lip in this fairing, and it's gonna lip right into this light here. So you can see how it just kind of like locks in there, and then the rest of this will sit nice and flush, and you can line the rest of this up. And then this is a silver one down here. We're gonna go ahead and put it in so that our fairing doesn't move on us anymore. That'll be a good starting point. And then we'll get 2 of these without the little lips on the inside. And all this we're gonna do by hand. We're gonna put this guy in here, get it lined up, and do it by hand. At least get 3 or 4 threads in. A lot of this stuff will strip out really quickly, and that's the last thing you wanna do to your new bike, is ruin a bunch of these little components. That would really suck. So there we go, we got those in, we got that in. Now we have at least a decent little structure of keeping this together. We're gonna do the exact same thing on the opposite side here. This sets on top of it, slides in nicely like so. We'll put our little silver bolt back in under here. And here are our last 2 bolts that don't have the little extra flange on the inside. Those guys lined up, and they're all going in nicely. So we can run them down now. Don't over tighten these. They don't need much at all. For this bolt on this side here, remember we do have this little flange / washer that's a part of the bolt. That's what's gonna help allow us to line up these fairings nicely. You can see it'll sit flush. At this point, we can go ahead and put on our other piece. What you'll notice with this fairing is there are 2 pieces that stick up here, and then they have little lips. So it means they go up and in and slide forward. And then on this side, we have this piece right here that's gonna go up under this fuel tank. So by sticking it here, finding the spot where these go in, and then sliding forward, we are good to go. We have this bolt here with a flange that goes in. I like to do them by hand first, get 3 or 4 threads, best way to do it. Make sure that it lines up and then it's going inside the plastic. We can tighten this guy back up. and just keep working our way around the bike. Got this one here. Got to go and go with my hands. Go ahead and tighten it down. Get this guy in on the side. This is the last thing keeping us from putting this fairing piece on. And then remember, we have these flaps that have to go up and in, and then this piece here up under the fuel tank. So we'll get the fuel tank first. Line these guys up. Slide forward. Black screw up top. Tighten this guy down. We got this guy here. At this point, we could put our tray back in. Kind of got to put it in first and then under. The two silvers go in here. What I did notice is when you see a silver bolt, that's what goes inside the frame, the tubing itself. The black bolts go plastic to plastic. The silver ones generally go into the frame is what I've noticed so far. And then the last two frame bolts that hold these plastic pieces, we got this silver one that's under here. Get it tight. Remember this one under here, right next to the rear brake reservoir. Now we got the seat to put back on here. Now what I will mention with this seat is these are aluminum fittings in here, and you can, to me they look from the factory like somebody already kind of messed these up. It'd be really, really easy to cross thread these things because they're aluminum. So I heavily suggest being very nice to them so that you don't truly strip them out in there. Make sure you are getting those 3 or 4 threads before you start running them down with a ratchet or something. There we go. See, I can feel this one is legit going in. A good trick would be to use an extension and a socket and go backwards until you fill it properly in the right spot, and then start going down with it. There we go. I get getting 3 or 4 threads with just fingers. I'm good with that. Oh, that one went in good. As long as you're careful with them, they'll be fine. It was just something I felt worth noting, that it wasn't the best material that these are made out of by any means. All right. Put her back on. Slide our seat, our passenger seat, key and ignition. Go ahead and turn on our ignitions here. We're gonna go into our settings under vehicle, and you can see our QS right here, up and down. We wanna make sure that that is on. So once that's good to go, we should be ready to ride. So let's go out and let's ride this thing real quick.
Oh, I'm super excited, guys. It is finally installed. I don't know why this bike doesn't just come with it. It's $250 added to the cost of the bike. Oh, that feels pretty. Oh, that's smooth, guys. That is very freaking smooth. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Check this out. Ooh, auto blip downshift. Yes, thank you very much. Oh, she works freaking fantastic, guys. Yeah. I don't know if you can hear that. The change in the sound of the motor shifting, and it's super. Yeah, that's freaking fantastic. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. I know that this bike has just been an absolute blast to own. Yeah, that's freaking fantastic. Yeah, Quickshifter enabled. Is it worth it? Yeah. This is the stock one, guys. This is not an aftermarket one. This is freaking fantastic. This is gonna ruin me for riding for common, like, just commuting day to day. Yeah, you could use this pretty much all the time. This is freaking fantastic. Okay. I'm in love. Alright guys, so that pretty much covers it for the Quickshifter. It's installed. You can see the process was quite easy. Yes, we did have to do way more disassembly than I had expected. From my understanding, taking the Quickshifter off requires you to pretty much take off the entire rear set. I hope the way I showed you guys makes sense and is easy to do. I know it was way the hell easier than removing the whole freaking rear set, that's for sure. So I hope that was useful for you guys. Next up is either going to be the IMU or the mirrors. I honestly cannot stand these goofy mirrors anymore. I need them off ASAP. We also have the up map coming as well. So I am truly enjoying this motorcycle. It's a friggin' blast. And now that it has the Quickshifter and I'm about to get that IMU, hopefully that will be a good upgrade for this bike. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace.